Do you believe that harsh punishments and some amount of hitting, etc., are good for the child's long term development? This video is for you. A parent recently told me an overachieving friend of hers said that, you know what, hey, all this gentle, being kind of supportive kind of parenting, that only doesn't have data supporting it. The kind of parenting we all got, which involves some hitting, some amount of harshness, actually worked for us. And that's why we are successful. Now, first, I understand where this is coming from. We look back and we realize that our grandparents and parents did certain things that maybe we look back at our life and said that it made us like kind of tougher, and you don't want to make your child a little too soft and unable to handle the difficulties that real world will throw up at them. But just because something has been done for many, many years does not mean that today is also the best approach. A lot of improvements have happened in child psychology and developmental psychology, and let's see what it says. First, let's address this question. Does some amount of hitting build character in the long run? Let's look at what the American Association of Pediatrics tells us. It tells us that explicitly it recommends against corporal punishment of this type. They highlight that hitting children is linked to increased aggression, increased antisocial behavior, and mental health problems later on in life. It does not help in the long run. The WHO also agrees with this. It says that non-violent forms of discipline actually support healthier social and emotional development of the child. And you may now ask, hey, but if this is true, we're all fine, right? Lots of people have turned out fine. What's your argument against it? And there are two arguments against it. The first is survivorship bias. The people who are successful tend to talk more. They're more vocal about how their some kind of trauma in their past has helped them. But if you look at the data, a small percentage, a really tiny percentage of children exposed to such traumatizing, difficult experiences end up developing positive traits because of it. It's called post-traumatic growth. But it's a very small portion. But they end up talking a lot. Their stories get really popular. So going by that would be like you're playing Russian roulette with your child. Let me just traumatize them a little bit and then hope they have the positive side effects of it, which is well known to be pretty rare. Most children, and they don't end up talking too much, they don't have a big voice. When they grow up, they struggle with issues, but that doesn't come into the limelight as much. That's one reason why, hey, we turned out fine, right? Has it's getting a lot of traction. The second reason is, when we say fine, what do we really mean? Sure, some of us can hold a job, but we might be holding a lot of rage underneath, or we have deep fear of conflicts, and those kind of get brushed under the rug because we're holding a job, we're doing things superficially fine. So the other question is, when we say fine, do we mean that we survived? Look, we are here. Then sure. But are we thriving? Are we really having great social and emotional development that's appropriate for our age, or are we struggling underneath and unable to acknowledge it also? So second reason is that the word fine kind of sometimes means we survived, and that's true. But is that the bar, or do we want our children to thrive much better than we did? So what is the right thing to do here? Because your concern is correct, right? Hey, okay, I'm supposed to be gentle and supportive and all that, but am I not supposed to have any boundaries? Am I not supposed to enforce any rules? That's an overcorrection. A lot of the parents who I've seen who kind of had this kind of very authoritarian parenting, they learned that was bad. They can see the impacts of it and they go complete the other side. They're like, I'm going to make my child do whatever they want to all the time. I'm going to make them happy, and that's my entire job. And that is not good as well. That's called permissive parenting, where you're hardly having any rules, there are hardly any boundaries, and you let the child do whatever they want. And is that good? No. Just like authoritarian, where you're like punitive, you're being like really pushy, etc., is also bad. Right? So intention and not going too far is correct. So what's the right thing to do? Is that it's often called authoritative parenting, not authoritarian, which combines warmth with clear boundaries and communications around it that are like gentle and yet firm. And we'll go deeper into how to do this maybe in later videos, but let's look at what the studies say, right? So there's a Journal of Family Psychology which calls out that parenting that combines warmth with such clear boundaries, so there are rules, but it's done in a warm way, often called authoritative parenting, leads to higher self-esteem, improved academic performance. So it's not just like, hey, all this will make them emotionally better but not successful. Actually, it makes them more successful, and healthier emotional regulation when they grow up and turn into adults. So by being warm and supportive, you're not being weak or too lenient. There are ways to mitigate that. So don't become one of those parents who makes a mistake that I've met a lot, who's like, hey, I need my child to handle real world difficulties later on. So I'll become a difficulty for them. I'll become part of that problem and hope they learn it through me. That is not how human children work. Children come into the world expecting to have a safe environment that's home, which helps them have that comfort to be able to go handle uncertainties and difficulties outside. The safer they feel this is, the better they are at that, not the other way. And it's one of the biggest misconceptions that I think creates like this big problem of feeling a little unsure about providing that comfort and safety to that children. So somebody tells you such parenting is risky. Let them know that the overwhelming evidence is that it's actually much better for children's not just immediate behaviors, but true long term success.